In the Perspectrum podcast, we discuss controversial topics. Outside of this context, Michael and I are both working professionals. While doing the show, we are not acting as agents or representatives of our respective institutions, and none of the views that we express reflect the outlooks of our employers. So don't come to my office and throw toilet paper at me.
And I don't have an office, but don't come to my cube.
Welcome to the Perspectrum. I'm Nathan Seelove.
And I'm Michael Bloom.
And we have I don't know if we can call it an exciting episode because the world sucks. The world's terrible.
Yeah, dude. We picked quite a doozy of a time to go into a deep slumber, to hibernate over the winter and totally disconnect from the outside world. Because, boy, things are pretty crazy now that we're back.
It was a holiday break that went a little bit longer than we had originally planned it to because just stuff kept happening and we kept needing to push it back. But we are back, baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just like to point out that since we've been gone, the Luigi Mangione thing came and went.
We've got our work cut out for us. We've got a big hole to dig our way, or I guess, like a mountain to climb in terms of like stories to get through. Just the executive orders out of this administration alone, it's going to take weeks. So there's plenty to talk about. And I'm excited to get started.
So today in our first segment, we're going to talk about Trump executive orders. But of course, there is a mountain of horrible, terrible executive orders, and we needed to figure out certain things to prioritize for our first episode. So we decided to pick his executive order regarding DOGE, executive orders regarding immigration, and executive orders regarding gender. Not that everything else isn't important, and not that there aren't a ton of other important things, but those are just what we're going to talk about this week, and we have a whole 4 years to talk about all of the other terrible things that he is doing, the ways in which he is straight up trying to just destroy the government. Just destroy the U.S. government in every conceivable way, and it's not even hiding the fact that he's trying to create a fucking oligarchy. Like it is absolutely insane. So let's get started. You want to start by talking about DOGE?
Yes, let's do it. So if you've been living under a rock, the Trump administration has put out a absolute flurry of executive orders, pretty typical for new presidents coming into office to change the executive orders from the previous administration. Roll out a bunch of new policies and stuff like that. And so in some ways, this is business as usual for the change of an administration. And I do want to talk about like the executive order itself, because if you just read the executive order, it's kind of a nothing burger.
Yeah.
But it's truly the implementation of it and the empowering of Elon Musk and the people surrounding him in like this extra governmental way that is like the real like crux of what the problem is here.
And before you get into that, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that Elon Musk's only qualification is the fact that he gave Trump $300 million to get elected. Yeah. Like this dude literally bought his way into the United States government. Yeah. This is what oligarchy looks like. Now, we've had an oligarchy for since the Reagan administration, pretty much, that has been slowly descending more and more into oligarchy. And it's kind of been a bit of a well-kept secret. Like it's the most well-kept secret in Washington. Now that Trump's in charge, again, they're just not even hiding it. They're not even pretending. Like at his inauguration, the 3 richest men on the fucking planet had better seats than Trump's cabinet.
Yeah. And just to be clear, that's not normal.
That's not normal. That is not normal. All right. Yeah. The only reason why Elon Musk is being given this much power in this administration is because he bribed Trump.
Yeah.
All right. It's because of bribery. Yeah. This is the corruption that we've been talking about on this pod since we first started doing this pod.
Yeah.
This is basically the logical conclusion of everything we've been talking about.
Yeah. For sure. And the incredible amount of power that this group of folks, because it's not really a department, is wielding, and the way in which they're doing it in a way that is totally ungoverned ungovernable and being totally empowered by the administration is a huge problem, especially for a group of people that are not elected, not even confirmed. They're just like, they don't have a real official role in the government. So the executive order is called, quote, establishing and implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency. On its face, honestly, not that scary of a thing. Like, it establishes this like DOGE department to implement the DOGE agenda, which is just this efficiency agenda. Ultimately, like, it didn't actually even make a new department. It just renamed an existing service called the United States Digital Service, which was established under President Obama following the like botched 2014 rollout of healthcare.gov. So basically, this service was established to make our government better at functioning in a digital age. Pretty reasonable service. And then it also establishes the U.S. DOGE Service Temporary Organization, which is responsible with trying to execute an 18-month efficiency agenda. So ultimately, like, when you first read it, it's like, okay, this is an administration tasked with making us better at technology, making us more efficient, that'll be headed by a USDS administrator, right? Pretty typical for a service like this. It does establish that all of the agency heads should take necessary steps to coordinate with this administrator and to the maximum extent consistent with the law that they should provide all access to unclassified agency records, software systems, and IT systems. The kind of things that you'd be like, yeah, if someone were going in and doing, you know, making digital investments into improving how our government operates, which is ostensibly what this order is supposed to do, they would access these software systems. And, you know, it has the normal boilerplate language around, like, nothing should be construed to, you know, say we should violate the law and we should be respecting cybersecurity and privacy standards and all this stuff. So when you read the executive order and then you see how the Democrats are responding, which, like, just Chuck Schumer came out and said, quote, before our very eyes, an unelected shadow government is conducting a hostile takeover of the federal government. So my first response was like, okay, is this just another case of, like, Democrats, like, freaking out and going way overboard and just, like, trying to pin something on the Trump administration that they're not actually doing?
And I would love to be able to just say, yep, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. But here's the problem. Number one, we need to understand that when oligarchs are in charge of so-called government efficiency, they're not talking about efficiency in the administration of making sure that the services that you need, that everyday Americans need, is carried out in a way where it's actually meaningful, it's actually sent to you. What they mean is, let's cut those services, let's reduce those services, let's reduce regulation on corporations, and let's all just run rampant.
Yeah.
That's what it means. That's the whole idea. Now, one of the things that I remember early on when DOGE was first being created that Senator Bernie Sanders was actually talking about was basically that Musk had mentioned the military budget. And so he was basically like, oh, okay, so you know, Bernie was like, oh, so you believe that we spend too much on the military. I absolutely agree. We should do some cuts. Here's the thing. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
All right. There's no way that DOGE is going to target the actual wasteful spending, which is military spending, which we spend more than the next, like, I don't even remember what the number is at this point. I think it's like the next 12 countries combined. And the only reason why we spend so much on the military is because military manufacturers basically bribe politicians in order to make sure that they get more money. All right. It's all part of the military industrial complex. So that's the only reason why that happens. So there's no way that there's actually going to be a reduction in funding for the military. What's probably going to happen is they're going to target federal programs. And the fact of the matter is, they've already started doing that.
Exactly. Yeah. When we say that, like, the oligarchs in this case, which again sounds like it's overblown, but this is literally what's happening, are, like, coming after not actual wasteful spending, but, like, the core functions of our government, like, they're already giving us evidence to support this belief. Like, this is not being pulled out of whole cloth. Like this is literally 2 or 3 weeks in. They're already doing this.
Yeah.
So the Musk team has moved to try to dismantle government agencies. They've attempted to push out hundreds of thousands of civil servants, attempting to like fire these people, and have attempted to and have successfully gained access to a ton of private tax and like treasury payment information. And we'll talk through in more detail all of this stuff. And they're attempting to convince the Treasury Department to illegally stop the payment of stop government payments which have been allocated by Congress, which is unconstitutional.
So first off, they're actually working to shut down USAID, which is the American government's humanitarian and development aid agency. So this is the agency that is in charge of various aspects of international aid, right? And there's actually been several false claims made about what is happening for USAID. At one point, Trump was actually trying to make the claim that we were sending condoms to Hamas in Gaza, and it turned out it was the wrong fucking Gaza.
Any Gaza, no condoms.
Yeah.
Anti-prophylactic agenda.
Yeah, it was literally part of a larger attempt to try to reduce sexually transmitted diseases in a completely different Gaza. This also means that countries that have been impacted by various things that the U.S. has done, such as the Gaza in Palestine, that's all being shut down. And the thing is, as it stands, that agency has basically been responsible and in charge of managing $40 billion of executive spending, at least as of 2023. All of that humanitarian assistance is basically just on pause. And there are various different organizations, aid organizations, international organizations throughout the globe that heavily rely on that aid from the United States government.
Yeah.
All right.
Including aid workers who have like lost access to their emails and shit. Like they are just on the whim, like shutting down this organization. The other thing is, it's not an organization that depends on an executive order. So it was originally established with an executive order by President Kennedy in the 1960s. But in 1998, Congress made it established it as a federal government agency, which means you can't just shut it down because you feel like it. And nor can you roll it into under the Secretary of State or into the State Department, which is what Secretary of State Marco Rubio has suggested they might do instead. Like, these are not options that they have on the table. And so this is just one clear example of the DOGE Commission going way beyond what is a somewhat reasonable and restricted like grant from as under the executive order to like really legislate and really like overextend the power of the executive in charge and really just like shit the bed first and then ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah. He's also Trump has also claimed that like the agency has been responsible for funding undocumented crossings to the United States.
Fucking
which
bullshit.
I don't even know where the fuck you get that from. Like he claims that only 10% of the funds actually reach communities abroad, which is just not true. He claims that they've basically gone rogue. He said, quote, the attitude that USAID has adopted over the years is no, we are independent of the national interest. That's just fundamentally false.
Yeah.
Like he's making false claims about the agency and pulling the rug out from under aid workers and international organizations throughout the globe.
Yeah. And even if all of this were true, even if the main function of USAID was giving condoms to like members of Hamas in Gaza, they still wouldn't have the authority to shut it down. Like they just can't do it. In another like striking example of overreach, it came out from private communications last week that a DOGE representative asked the most senior career official within the Treasury Department to halt aid payments because Musk believed that they might violate Trump's executive orders. Again, this is money that's been allocated. You can't just stop it at the agency that's responsible for writing the checks, not deciding what the checks get written for. So David Lebrick, who was at the time the acting Treasury Secretary, told Musk's team that the department does not have the authority to cancel payments authorized by federal agencies, and was later ousted by Trump officials. And the new, Treasury Secretary has agreed to basically hand access over to the DOGE Commission for this like check writing responsibility, which is, I don't know, writing checks is one of the main functions of the federal government.
Yeah. And the thing is that right there also speaks to a trend that we are seeing, which is that people that are getting jobs within the Trump administration, within the various federal agencies, they're not getting them based on their own merits, based on their own expertise. It's literally just how loyal they all are to Trump.
Yeah.
There is a report from the Associated Press that basically says that during these vetting processes, during these job interviews, they're straight up asking like, "Oh, when was your MAGA revelation?"
Oh my God. It's like they're joining a cult.
It's literally like they're joining a cult. They're basically making them sign loyalty pledges, which is hilarious. We're not going to get into the DEI stuff today. We will at some point, but we're not going to get into that today. But I just find it hilarious that his whole argument is, we're getting rid of DEI because we want to make sure that the people running the government are running it based on, are getting those positions based on merit. It's like, great. What's the merit?
Yeah.
They kiss my ass.
Yeah. Ass-kissing ability.
Yeah, I believe John Stewart actually made the point that basically these are DEI hires for the minority population of ass kissers.
Yeah.
Which I think we should start using that because that's fucking brilliant.
It's brilliant. It's very accurate. And on top of that, they've sent out an email, right? Asking to a wide variety of civil servants, asking them to either like pledge their loyalty essentially, or commit to like resigning from their posts. Basically, just again, we'll talk through this in more detail. Basically, just trying to dismantle the government.
Yeah.
And on top of this, something that's been in the news a lot and is pretty serious is DOGE's access to the Treasury Department payment system. So this is basically a record and data on everyone in the United States who has paid taxes, has received Social Security, has been a beneficiary or someone who's paid to the government, right? And you might think like, okay, yeah, but like, it's just data that the government has. Like, that's not crazy. Except it's like everyone's bank account information, and typically like political appointees, which, Musk would fall into that group if he were appointed. Even if they have really high security clearance, are nowhere near this data because it's so sensitive and so valuable, right? Like we're talking about trillions of dollars going through this system, like being able to hijack it, the cybersecurity risks, the data sensitivity risks, like they're violating all of these requirements for responsible data handling and access controls, and there's really no justification for it, like for accessing this data whatsoever. And legal experts think that they're violating the Privacy Act and a bunch of cybersecurity laws, and ultimately, like, they just shouldn't be accessing. Especially these are not government employees, right? These are fucking private individuals who are just like hired to go in and blow up the government, gaining access to our most sensitive and personal information.
Now, there is some potential good news on that front. So U.S. District Judge Colleen Collar Catelli has basically weighed in and said that she might be issuing at least a short-term block in response to the various lawsuits that are being carried out against Elon Musk and and DOGE to basically block their access to being able to share the payment system, like or their access to the Treasury payment system.
Yeah.
Now it's unclear as to how long that will last. It's unclear what might happen in terms of appeals, but there might at least be a short-term block, which is at least a potential good news.
And now it's time for a more lighthearted segment, Tips for Good. So Nathan, why do we do Tips for Good?
Well, Michael, I'm so glad you asked, because we do Tips for Good every week because we are so fucked. Fuck.
That doesn't sound very Tips for Good. It does sound familiar, though.
I mean, it's supposed to be a song, and we've never done that song.
Maybe
before,
we should do that as like the outro for our episodes now. Just make like a real version of that.
We are so fucked.
Yeah, maybe I'll make that into an actual recording at some point. But Nathan,
maybe I just like saying the word fuck. And you know what? I gotta tell you, being able to just say the word fuck sometimes it just makes the world a better place.
I agree. Fuck does make the world a better place.
Oh shit, dude! I just remembered that's why we do Tips for Good.
Dude, we've been off too long.
It's because we're trying to make the world a better place.
For sure. Well, maybe we'll just do that.
Let's do that. Okay.
Good idea.
So Michael, what is our tip for good this week?
Guys, things have been crazy already. It has been a tidal wave of executive orders and policy changes and news articles and chaos. And it's going to feel really tempting to retreat from all of that chaos and protect, our personal well-being, mental health, and all of that stuff. And you should protect your mental health. But even if it's a small bite here and there, it's really important that we don't disengage and step away. Ultimately, one of the benefits of creating all this chaos is to overwhelm the American public and make us want to disengage and retreat and throw our hands up. And even if it doesn't feel like there's a huge benefit of keeping track and paying attention, there really is. It matters. Yeah. It matters. So even if it's, a news article a week or a podcast or a few videos or what, or maybe it's just picking a topic and keeping up with that by itself, remaining engaged is critical, and doing it in a way that's sustainable is, the only way that's going to work through the next 4 years.
Authoritarians want you to check out because they want to be able to do everything with impunity. Yeah. And as long as we make sure that we stay engaged, stay knowledgeable, as long as we make sure that we protest and we speak out, they're not going to win. Yeah. And we've already started to see that around the country. There were massive protests that broke out in LA. There were massive protests that broke out in front of the Treasury building in response to DOGE. There have been nationwide protests this week, where I believe the number was up to 50,000 people all across the country coming out in all 50 states. That is what we need. All right. This is the resistance. Yeah. Things are going to get worse. They are. These next 4 years are going to be scary. Our goal is to make sure that ideally we still have a country by the end of that, but also that we have gotten so engaged and so energized that we're ready to make sure that we come back in full force. All right. that we not just undo the horrific crap that Trump is going to do in the next 4 years, but to actually try to make things better.
And that's Tips for Good.
As Trump has taken office, as per many of his campaign promises, he is implementing a wide range of horrifically anti-trans policies that are just across the board, and many of which will straight up just result in people dying.
Yes.
Like, so first off, he issued an executive order on Wednesday, which is the day that we're actually recording, that basically bars trans women and girls from participating in sports on the K through 12 and college level. Now, look, at some point, I think that Michael and I should do a whole segment about trans people in sports.
Mm-hmm.
This has always just been something that I think is just a fucking distraction.
Yeah.
I think it's the one thing that Republicans chose that was like a relatively popular way of attacking trans people. Honestly, it makes sense to me to just have a system where people compete in sports based on like testosterone levels. All right? Doesn't have to be like gender-based or sex-based. It can just be testosterone levels. All right? Boom, problem solved. All right? Fairness in sports, and let's never have this stupid conversation again.
Yeah.
All right? So there's that. But what I think is crazy, what I think is absolutely insane, is that he's actually using Title IX to justify it.
Yes.
All right?
Yep.
He is basically saying that schools that violate this will be denied federal funds on the grounds that they violated Title IX, which prohibits sex discrimination in schools. That is literally like saying, that's like using the fucking Civil Rights Act to justify his DEI executive order. Like,
yeah, except like that's explicitly the kind of thing that he's doing. Like another of his executive orders, which is kind of a foundational one about defending women from gender ideology extremism, literally makes that argument. It literally attempts to establish the quote biological reality of sex. It attempts to establish just a sex binary, a male and female, and literally makes the argument that and it instructs the federal government to construe all like regulations and protections having regard to sex in this strict sex-based binary without regard to gender, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, to your point, like it's literally saying, like laws and regulations that are designed to prevent discrimination based on sex must distinguish based on sex between male and female. Which is like, to your point, it is so crazy. and
here's the thing to also recognize, like just a quick side note. Even if we're not talking about trans people, even if we're not talking about, trying to separate the difference between sex and gender, to say that there are only two sexes is also scientifically inaccurate.
It is scientifically absurd.
1.7% of people, of the population, have some type of intersex condition.
Yes.
1.7. Now,
yes.
You might think, well, that doesn't sound like that much. Like 1.7% of the population, like that seems like a fairly small amount. But think about that in the context of how many people are in the United States.
Sure.
All right. To put that into perspective, approximately the same percentage of people have an intersex condition that have red hair. All right. Think about the number of people that you know with red hair. Odds are you probably know around that number of people with some type of intersex condition. Most of them happen on the chromosomal level. Some happen on the gonadotropic level. Some happen on the level regarding genitalia. Some are just like a mix of all of those. But 1.7% are basically just erased by this executive order.
It's totally crazy. It's totally ascientific, to your point. It is just not true that there are two distinct, like perfectly distinct categories of sex, right?
Yeah.
And hilarious, like the science in this executive order is hilarious. I do want to mention the most hilarious fucking self-own. Let me read you a couple of sentences from this executive order, and I want to see if you can point out the crazy shit that is at play here. Okay. It is the policy of the United States to recognize two sexes, male and female. These sexes are not changeable and are grounded in fundamental and incontrovertible reality. Female means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the large reproductive cell. Male means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the small reproductive cell.
So early on in conception, don't most embryos basically have the building blocks to produce the so-called small reproductive cell? Also, like, does that mean that if you have a really small penis, like, you don't?
So I think the small reproductive cell refers to sperm, not dicks.
Okay.
But so here's what I'm thinking. Well, one, I'm not a biologist, but boy, it seems to me like conception is the point at which a fucking egg splits into two cells instead of one, which definitely doesn't have a fucking gender at that point. But two, even if you do have a gender at conception, we start out during development, the things that form first are female reproductive organs that descend into male reproductive organs later on in the development process. We all develop ovaries that then become testes as we develop. So I guess this is just saying we're all girls. What's also hilarious is that the order says that the Secretary of Health and Human Services has 30 days to establish public guidance on the definition, essentially, of sex. Basically admitting that sex is complicated and answering their
shit.
Yeah, exactly. And so you need some time to figure out what the fuck is going on. It's like, it's totally insane.
Yeah. Now, that one is kind of just like an overall direction. I don't know how much like that. I don't know how much specific impact that one will have. This next one has a lot more impact. He issued an executive order that would basically ban federal funds from going to any medical provider that gives gender affirming care to youth under the age of 19.
Yep.
Oh, and on top of that, the order has also directed the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to publish a review within the next 90 days of existing literature and best practices for promoting the health of children with gender dysmorphia. So basically what that means is that after that review happens, you can't trust a fucking thing you see in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, because there are actually articles that I'm about to cite from the Department of Health and Human Services, from people who do actual fucking science, from people who carry out actual studies that show the benefits of gender-affirming care. Now, I know that we've talked about this before, but I just want to reiterate something.
Yeah.
Surgery does not happen until the kid is at least 16, and only top surgery. All right? This narrative that they started creating, like Donald Trump straight up said, like, these during the campaign, he's like, these kids, they're going to school and the nurses are performing gender reassignment surgery and they're just coming back a different like he
really
actually fucking made that
nurses.
claim. He actually fucking made that claim. Like, shit, you did, like, nurses have to call parents to give the kids ibuprofen. You think that they're performing gender reassignment surgery? Are you fucking nuts?
Crazy.
Like, Jesus Christ. And again, that doesn't happen until they're at least 16. And this is after like a long process of therapy that has confirmed that this is the right path. Yeah. All right. The other things that you have access to are puberty blockers. Now, here's the thing about puberty blockers, and we have said this over and over again on this show. People lie about puberty blockers. People lie about what puberty blockers actually do. All right. According to the Mayo Clinic, puberty blockers do not cause permanent changes. Yeah. They do not cause permanent physical changes. All that they do is pause puberty. That is it. They just pause puberty. And in fact, puberty blockers are actually used on cis children as well when they have, when they have early puberty.
Mhm.
that is used as a treatment for early puberty.
Yeah.
We've been using this for a long time, and
Yeah.
nobody has ever been like, "Oh, it's going to permanently destroy their reproductive like that's not what it does." All right? And the reason for that, the reason for the pause is to basically say, "Okay, we don't want to make any rash decisions about this, about this
Mhm.
child with gender dysmorphia's identity right now. We want to make sure because we recognize that children might not always know exactly who they are, right?
Mhm.
That's absolutely true. So we're just going to put a pause on puberty for now because we know because of studies that going through puberty for various different youth with gender dysmorphia can be straight up traumatizing. All right, it can be straight up traumatizing. And then the third option is hormone therapy. Now,
Mhm.
hormone therapy can actually develop some more some more permanent aspects, but again, that happens later down the line after there has been years of therapy to determine which particular treatment avenue is the better avenue.
Yeah.
And the thing you all need to understand is that reducing access to gender affirming care means suicide. All right. According to the Trevor Project, in their 2024 survey, national survey of LGBT youth, 46% of transgender or non-binary young people in the last year alone seriously considered attempting suicide.
Mhm.
And on top of that, and this is a study that comes from the Department of Health and Human Services, but again, this might actually end up being, this study will probably be taken down.
Mhm.
When it comes to gender affirming treatment, all right, and this was a survey of adults, prior to receiving gender affirming treatment, 73.3% of the sample in this particular study reported a history of suicidal ideation, which dropped to 43.4% following gender affirming treatment.
Mhm.
And here's the other one. Here's what I think is the most important number. 35.8% of that same sample reported a history of attempting suicide versus among those who actually got gender affirming care, like after they got gender affirming care, that number dropped to 9.4%.
Hmm.
All right. We know that this saves lives.
Yeah.
But Trump doesn't give a shit about that. Trump doesn't give a shit about saving lives. He doesn't give a shit about children. He doesn't even give a shit about trans people. All right. He was actually asked in 2016, like, hey, if Caitlyn Jenner were to come to the Trump hotel, like, would you let her use the bathroom of her choice? And he's like, yeah, of course I would. He doesn't care about this. This is just a campaign issue. This is just a virtue signal campaign issue that a bunch of far right assholes online has turned into their central message. All right, their central obsession, which is just hating trans people. He doesn't actually give a shit about that. He doesn't care about that. And the result is going to be trans children will die because of this.
Yeah. Yes, they will. And even aside from the gender affirming care, he's even going further to undermine the respect and fair treatment of trans children, even in their schools. So another executive order he put out called "Ending Radical Indoctrination in K through 12 Schooling" specifically talks about ending federal funding or support for like indoctrination, he calls it, including gender ideology. And from his other executive orders, we know that gender included in gender ideology is simply like referring to someone by their preferred pronouns, preferred name, preferred gender in general, right? And then it goes on to say that it eliminates all federal funding sources and streams, including grants or contracts that directly or indirectly support or subsidize the instruction, advancement, or promotion of gender ideology or discriminatory equity ideology in schools.
Yeah.
Which means, subtext, if a school receives federal funding, as most public schools do, They cannot respect someone's gender identity and treat them like as they are, like, identify, because
And
they risk losing their federal funding.
that same Trevor Project survey that I mentioned earlier found that those who were in schools that were gender affirming had lower rates of attempting suicides.
Yep.
But Trump
It
is
is
doing
just
all he can
fucking cruel.
to make sure that doesn't happen. It is just cruel. It is just evil, sick, psychopathic. All right. There's no other way of describing it. And finally, he issued an executive order, once again, banning trans people from the military.
Of course.
Like, people that serve our country.
Yeah.
He is banning them from the military.
Yeah.
He is banning people. He is banning people from the military, which is something that he was too
Yeah.
He never served in the military.
Yeah.
Because of that bullshit with bone spurs, and people that decide to make that decision to serve our country in the military are not given that option because of because of being trans. And the whole argument is basically, oh well, we'll have to pay for their care. Fucking fine.
Yeah.
All
Totally.
right. Fucking fine. These people served our country. All right.
Yeah.
That, like, we one of the big things that we try to talk about in society is the problems with veterans committing suicide. Okay, we know that gender affirming care prevents suicide.
Yeah.
So just view it that way. Like,
Totally.
I don't know. I can't see how anybody can call this guy pro-military in any type of way. Like, pro-veteran.
The most disrespectful fucking line from this executive order, quote, "Adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle."
Fuck you.
Absolutely fuck you.
Like, yeah.
And now it's time for our favorite segment,
Ass Hat of the Week. So, Michael, who is our ass hat this week?
Well, Nathan, our ass hat is an ass that just keeps on hatting. I thought we were done with Lauren Boebert. You know, I thought maybe she would recede into the background after the vape hand job in a movie theater incident. But it turns out that she just, you can't keep her down. Not even her own impunity will keep her down. So recent...
Lori Bowe is back. Come on down.
I know. Come on down. So a recent incident happened at the Capitol of all places. So
did it involve Beetlejuice?
Fortunately for all of the other people in the Capitol building, it did not.
Okay, good.
Yeah, in this case, it involved the other fake specter that all of the Republicans are terrified of consistently: gender ideology. Ooh, very
Yikes.
scary. If you say that 3 times, you turn... you switch genders. So apparently, Boebert went into the bathroom on the House floor and was in there and told another person in the bathroom that they should not be there, that they shouldn't be in the bathroom. Apparently, and she kind of accosted this person attempting to kind of make a political statement, a political scene in the bathroom, thinking that the person that she was talking to was Democratic Representative Sarah McBride, who is the first transgender member of Congress. So she thought that Sarah McBride was in the ladies' room, and so she accosted her, attempting to get her to be evicted from the ladies' room. But as so often ends up being the case with these transphobes, they're not great at, I guess, identifying people, or maybe it's just that you can't tell if someone's trans just by looking at them. I don't know. Maybe that's something that they should really think about, because
maybe it just goes back to hashtag Lauren Boebert's so dumb.
That is probably right, because she literally misidentified her own colleague. It was not McBride. It was just some other lady who was not trans in the bathroom, who she was like trying to evict from the bathroom for being trans. Causing this like whole scene in the house, and thoroughly embarrassing.
It is so fucked up that they give a shit where a woman who has been elected, a trans woman who has been elected to serve a district who is
Mhm.
like who it is so fucked up that they care where she shits. Like
Seriously.
that's weird, all right? We need to bring back the weird talk. That
Yeah.
is just weird.
It's just weird.
The fact that you actually care that much, that
Yeah.
you actually have a rule for that.
Yeah.
That is just weird. And by the way, if you're saying, "Oh, well, it's because we're worried about sexual predators," no, you're not. You voted for Trump.
Yeah, exactly. And she made this whole scene. She went to security, like the security personnel that are stationed there, trying to get telling them that the guy was in the bathroom and trying to do this whole thing, and ultimately
Jesus.
had to like apologize publicly for a case of mistaken identity. Oh man, what a fucking idiot. The other thing about the whole like, predators in bathrooms thing is like, I've heard this from a few comedians. It's like, so they think that there are these awful predators, attempting to prey on poor women in bathrooms, and all they need is to do hormone therapy and
Yeah.
put on dress in like typically feminine clothes and wear makeup and get all dressed up and then sneak into the bathroom. But if there's a ladies only sign or a female sign on the door, stumped. No
Yeah.
fucking options.
Yeah. No. You know what they're doing, Michael? Yeah,
Hmm.
you're sexual, like it's a sexual predator.
Mhm.
They come up to a bathroom and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh fuck. Okay, let me look up the laws in my state real
Yes.
quick
Yep.
to see
Exactly.
like okay, am I
allowed in
legally
here?
allowed to enter this? Ah,
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
God
Exactly.
damn it. They have an anti-trans bathroom law in this. I
What-
guess I'm
yeah.
not going in this
What
bathroom today.
loopholes are left? Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
God damn it. They curse them with their foresight.
So congratulations to Lauren Boebert for once again being our
Ass hat of the week. And finally, let's talk about immigration, which
Yeah.
this is where we're starting to go into the Third Reich, or the Fourth Reich, I guess I should say. Like straight up, scary shit right here. Scary shit right here. So there were a number of executive orders that he issued regarding immigration. One of them was basically about protecting the United States from foreign terrorists and other national security, public safety threats. Now, this goes back to the line that he keeps saying over and over again, where basically there are international terrorists that are coming across our southern border, and there's never been any evidence of that happening to any type of wide degree. This basically makes it more difficult for people to achieve visas. There's going to be more restrictions from people from certain countries.
Mhm.
And there's going to be a more thorough vetting process during the issuing of visas.
Yeah, and one of the things that he explicitly called out as criteria for like declining to allow people into this country. So there's a list, right? The United States to protect its citizens from aliens who, quote, intend to commit terrorist acts. Okay, give it to you.
Yeah.
Threaten our national security. Perfect. Wonderful. Keep us safe, whatever. Espouse hateful ideology or otherwise exploit immigration laws for malevolent purposes. Literally, like viewpoint discrimination in our immigration system.
Yeah, and he's actually directly said he's going to prevent Marxists and socialists from being able to be immigrants. Now, some people might hear that and be like, "Well, yeah, but that's far right. That's far left extremists." This motherfucker was calling Kamala Harris a Marxist.
Yeah.
Like when
center
he says
left
that,
extremists.
when he says that, he is basically saying anybody that is not a MAGA Republican.
Yeah.
That's what he means when he says that. All right. Make no mistake. This is not about trying to prevent us from terrorists, protect us from terrorists. It is about trying to restrict people with an ideology that he doesn't like from coming into our country, and not people with extreme ideologies necessarily. Yep. People with just like left of center ideologies.
Yeah, not even necessarily ideologies that he doesn't like. Skin colors too, for sure.
That too. Absolutely.
Yeah, because so another executive order he rolled out suspends the U.S. refugee admissions program, which is again cruelty on its face, because his opinion is that admitting refugees would be detrimental to U.S. interests. And so basically like saying that he only wants to admit refugees that will fully and appropriately assimilate in order to take the tax burden off of citizens. Again, we've talked about this before. Migrants and immigrants provide support for our tax base.
Yeah.
Like, it is not the case that they are a drain on our citizens' taxes.
And they're also more likely to be entrepreneurs, which
Yes.
means they're more likely to create jobs,
Literally
not take
making jobs.
And also, I want to point something out. All right. A lot of these orders target specifically making the legal process more difficult. Now, this completely goes against the claim that he kept making, which is like, oh no, it's the illegals. We're just going after the illegals, all right? For people that do it the right way, we're not going to go after them. Okay, but you're making the right way impossible.
Exactly.
And you know what happens when you make the right way impossible? More
wrong
people do
way.
it the wrong way.
Yes, exactly.
That's what fucking happens.
Yeah.
So what's, and we've seen this historically. We've talked about this on the pod. When you have reduction, or rather increases of border security, that has been historically linked to actually higher numbers of people who are undocumented being here in the country. And if you make it more difficult for people to come in legally in the first place, what incentive do they have to try to come in here legally, especially if they're refugees? I mean, think about it. Say you're in a country that is war-torn, and you got to get out of there. You got to get your family out of there, all right? You know, so you try to come to the United States. Now, and then you're told, well, so here's the thing about our refugee resettlement program. We don't have one.
Yeah.
You're just going to be like, okay, well then fuck you. I'm just going to come in and, you know, because I need to be somewhere that is not that war-torn place. I need to be somewhere else for a better life for my family.
Yep.
All right. This increases the number of undocumented people in the country. And here's the other thing that's really important. This is all under the guise of trying to protect us from, you know, potentially dangerous criminals, right? Potentially dangerous criminals. Now, putting aside the fact, and we shouldn't put this fact aside, but we're going to put it aside, putting aside the fact that studies actually show that undocumented immigrants commit crimes at a lower rate than natural-born citizens, all right? Putting aside that fact, what fucking sense does it make to allocate your resources, your immigration enforcement resources, to the vast, wide amount of people that are here undocumented, regardless of what reason they might have come here, and not to try to focus on the people that might actually have malicious intents? All right. If you are spending so much resources to try to go after various different families that are just here trying to seek a better life, those are resources that you could be spending focused on the actual gangs, on the actual gangs that you claim are making us less safe. If you made it so that the immigration process was a lot easier, that it actually made sense, if you gave people a pathway to citizenship, then the people who actually who do not mean us harm will take that path and will know who they are.
And you no longer have to worry about them.
Which means that the people left over, the people that are not here legally, they're more likely to actually be the types of people that might actually be meaning us harm, which means you can focus on them.
Yeah.
All right? Which would actually keep us safe.
Yep.
But instead, you are doing this uniform enforcement against every immigrant, not just people that would try to come here illegally, but people that would go through the legal process. And in the process, you are incentivizing the illegal approach to entering the country. Yeah. And you are straining resources that could be used on actual nefarious actors.
Yeah, totally. The last point I want to make about pausing the refugee program and the changes that he's made, he's also ended the Biden era program that was allowing migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela because on like humanitarian grounds, because all of those countries are going through crises at this point, right? And not only did he end these migrant programs, but also revoked temporary protected status. So, for example, nearly 350,000 Venezuelan migrants who fled their country and were here under temporary protected status are having that status taken away. So one Venezuelan activist, Beatriz Olivaria, said that for some, quote, returning would be suicidal.
Yeah.
And that for many, being sent back to the country would send them straight to prison for political activism. Like, we're talking about like forcing people back into countries that are truly unsafe. Repatriation for refugees is like a threat to their well-being and their lives. On top of that, in another swing of cruelty, he attempted to end birthright fucking citizenship. Now, if you wanted to like support illegal immigration, what like possible reason would you have for ending birthright citizenship, a legal path to become like to immigrate?
Yeah. Like, and this is blatantly unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Like, blatantly on its face unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
The 14th Amendment states, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny.
Open,
they literally,
shut.
in the executive order, they're like, yeah, but the 14th Amendment never meant to make birthright citizenship a thing. It just, because, basically people that are, people whose mother is here unlawfully or father is not a citizen or permanent resident or like whose mother is present in the United States as temporary or whatever, they're not, quote, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And it's like, they're not? Like, so they're just like these extrajudicial beings that
so
outside of the
citizens
reach.
were right.
Exactly. Outside of the reach of the United States. This is so fucking absurd that they're Yeah, they can pay taxes. They're subject to our laws. They can be sued. They can get a fucking traffic ticket. They can contribute to Social Security, but they're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Bullshit.
Yeah. The last one that I want to talk about is the executive order regarding protecting American people against invasion, which basically gives the DHS new immigration enforcement powers and ICE new immigration enforcement powers to basically go in to places that previously were kind of thought of as like, this is safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, you cannot do this.
Yeah. You can't like pick
without
them up from like churches and schools and things like that. Yeah.
Basically, they're saying, fuck it. And that also, like the whole school thing, that also is likely illegal. Federal agents actually attempted to enter a school in, I believe it was Chicago, and they were just turned away because it's like, no, you're not allowed in here. You're not allowed in here. This is a school day, and here that's the other thing. You can't say that the reason why you are carrying out this immigration enforcement is not because you're a racist bastard. It's because these are just criminals. You can't say that and then send federal agents into a school.
Yeah,
you just can't do that.
Sure.
All right, you cannot make that claim.
Yeah.
On top of that, this has led to various instances of American citizens being detained. There was a report, and this was reported by an anonymous family member of the people that this happened to. According to the LA Times, there was a Puerto Rican family. Now, keep in mind, Puerto Rico is America.
Yeah.
All right? These are American citizens. A Puerto Rican family was detained by ICE agents in Milwaukee for speaking Spanish.
Mm.
They spoke Spanish in a fucking grocery store.
Yeah.
And they were detained by ICE. And then when they were finally able to prove that they were born, that they were in the United States, they just said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And they were basically left stranded and had to figure out their own transportation home.
Yeah.
For speaking Spanish, a child was involved in that. All right, there was a child that was detained.
I don't think we can actually overstate the risk of that continuing to happen, because there's a couple things involved here, right? Like, so first off, obviously that sucks and is terrible. But also these executive orders have authorized the Secretary of Homeland Security to deputize state and local law enforcement officials to perform the functions of immigration officers in investigating, apprehending, and detaining aliens in the United States, right? So we've got local people without like immigration training necessarily to the degree that even ICE has immigration related training being deputized to take these actions. And then you have an expansion of expedited removal, which is our process to deport people without a court hearing, thus violating any due process in the process. And now typically expedited removals are limited to within 100 miles of the U.S. international borders, and they're applied to those who didn't request asylum and failed to show a case for asylum. But Trump's changes, he's expanded it so that removals can now occur anywhere in the United States and apply to anyone who can't prove that they have been in this country for more than 2 years. So basically, you've got a recipe for disaster where local police and state officials can be rounding up like Spanish-speaking U.S. citizens, or like U.S. citizens speaking other languages, and putting them through expedited removal proceedings if they don't happen to have their fucking passport on them. Yeah. Like, this is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. There's been a series of ICE raids in New Jersey. One of them actually picked up a U.S. veteran who was a citizen, who was detained, and basically his military record was questioned. They didn't believe him at first. And again, they're claiming that this is about the apprehension of like MS-13 gang members. But they're straight up picking up citizens, and they're even admitting that that is a possibility. All right. An ICE spokesperson told Newsweek in a statement, quote, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement may encounter U.S. citizens while conducting field work and may request identification to establish an individual's identity, as was the case during a targeted enforcement operation at a work site today in Newark, New Jersey. This is an active investigation, and per ICE policy, we cannot discuss the ongoing investigations. So basically what they're saying is, papers, please, welcome to Nazi Germany.
Yep.
All right.
Seriously.
And maybe we'll pick up some U.S. citizens in the meantime. Whatever. That's just the price. That's just the price of this. All right.
Yeah, it's just the price of this, being racist.
All right. You fucking better have those papers on you. Because if we suspect you of being an undocumented immigrant, we're gonna arrest your ass. And in this case, they arrested a U.S. citizen who was a military veteran. Again, like this is, it is not an unfair comparison to say this is Nazi Germany. All right, let me see your papers, please. That is Nazi Germany shit. And look, I'm not violating the Goldwater Rule. The guy that created the Goldwater Rule actually said that comparisons to Hitler are appropriate for Trump. He actually said that. The guy that created that rule.
Wait, what's the Goldwater Rule?
The Goldwater Rule is basically as soon as you start making comparisons to Hitler, you've lost the argument. Like you've lost the you've lost all, and that's been just a general rule where it's like, this person might suck, but they're not Hitler, and you're ridiculous for saying that. He actually came out and straight up said, actually, yeah, no, this is apt. This works. This is yeah.
The Goldwater Rule is so hopeful that like no one like Hitler will ever come around again.
I guess so. It's
yeah, and there's a lot more going on here. Like there's plenty more we could talk about. We will see a lot more impacts of this. Unfortunately, this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the negative impacts of this on our immigration, on our immigrant population, and on our U.S. citizen population. And now we'll end the show as we usually do with our highlights. So Nathan, what's your highlight this week?
So this is more of a highlight that has happened over the last few weeks, because it's been a while. But in the time that we've been recording, I think that my last highlight was that Sylvia had taken her first steps. My kid had taken her first steps.
Yeah.
Now she's walking all over the place.
Oh my
like
gosh.
all over the place. She is walking. I'm able to take her to the playground. I took her to the playground today, and she was walking around the Tot Park, and just she's going. She's in the process of going from being baby to kid, and
Oh my gosh.
it is
Too
just amazing.
fast.
It is just amazing to see. Yeah, it's parenthood, bro. Just parenthood. It's a beautiful thing.
That's awesome, dude. That's great to
Yeah.
hear. Congrats.
Yeah. What about you, Michael? What's your highlight?
Boy, I think my highlight is we've been working on preparing for this important meeting at work for a while. It's been a few months now, and it happened this morning, and it was a big success. Everything went super well. And yeah, it's great to move past that, and it's just great to have that be such a successful event. So that was great.
Nice.
And now thank the amazing people that make this show possible. Thank you to our patrons, Jerry DeViller, Taylor Bloom, Fade Out Scoop, Kyle Chaska, and Tobias Janssen for supporting the show. And thank you to our amazing editor, Kayla, for all they do to make the show possible. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to The Spectrum, and you'll hear from us again.